Hello and welcome to another video tutorial Monday. This week I wanted to do a little something with distress inks. I've been definitely playing around with them a lot lately, and I've just been really enjoying them. And the other night I made this card base. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it yet, but I made this card base doing some water stamping with distress inks, and I incorporated some shine here with Perfect Pearls Mist on watercolor paper, and I really wanted to do that again, but on a more masculine card. So that's what I'm doing for this card this week, and I've been on a masculine card kick lately, so I thought this is just another chance to make a fun card to have on hand for the future. So I'm going to use a bold background stamp from Penny Black. This is the Design Spotter one, and it has these dots all over it. And any bold stamp will work for this. I kind of wish it had bigger circles on it, but I'm using what I have on hand, and I really do like these circles, so I think it'll turn out pretty well. And I'm going to start out by taking this piece of watercolor paper and inking it up. And this watercolor paper is from Simon Says Stamp, and they sell it in packs of 5, and it's really, really nice stuff. It's really high quality. And I've just cut this down to 4 inches wide by 5 1/4. And so I'm just going to bring out my craft sheet here. And I have shabby shutters, peeled paint, and forest moss. And I'm going to start out with, I'm just going to use my 2 light colors on this mostly. And I'm just going to ink this entire background piece with the shabby shutters. And this will turn it green and give it a really pretty look. And now that I have that whole piece colored in shabby shutters, I'm going to take a little bit of peeled paint and go around from the outside and just make the outsides a little bit darker. I'm not using hardly any pressure on this time around. And I'm just dabbing it and then working in about 1.5 inches from the edge. And then I'm going to go back around again, and then this time I'm going to press a little bit harder and only go in about 1/2 inch. And this will just give you some nice depth to your background. That's it for coloring this with the blending tools. And then I'm just going to take my stamp here, and I'm going to ink it up with mostly peeled paint. And I'm going to ink this really, really well all over. And then I'm going to go in with some forest moss, especially around the edges where I know that I already have peeled paint ink, and kind of dab it as well on some of the dots on the inside here. Just giving it some depth of color. And then I have a mini mister filled with water and Perfect Pearls, and I've just added a ton of Perfect Pearls in here and mixed it up. The perfect pearls come in a little jar, and they look like this. And you can see size comparison here. And I just scooped in some of them into the bottle of water and then mixed it up. And I just mark it with a piece of tape so I don't get it confused with my regular water. Because although it looks really nice and glittery right now, it settles all to the bottom and you have to mix it up again. So a lot of times it looks just like clear water. So I have them marked. And then I'm just going to lift this up and making sure not to spray my sheet, my piece of paper that's already over here. I'm just going to mist this about 6 or 7 times until it's nice and wet. You want to make sure that you have lots of pools of water, because that's what makes it run and be very pretty. And then what we're going to do is put down our background onto this. Oops, it's okay. Put down our background onto this, and then put another piece of paper over the top, and then just rub over the top of it, and you'll transfer the ink over onto the paper. And now we can lift this up, and we have really pretty dots all over the card, and you can see that the water has interacted with the distress inks and has made them kind of run and do fun things. And you could even probably spray this again and stamp it on another piece of white cardstock and probably get some more color off of it. But I'm also going to do some flicking of water just to go along with that dots look. So I'm actually going to spray some down onto my craft mat. And then just take a paintbrush and flick it. Just holding it still and then using my other hand like this to create little droplets of water. And this will interact with the ink that's already on the paper and really make it a fun dotted look. So now we have this really cool background, and we can just use a heat gun to dry it. And it should dry fairly quickly. There's not a ton of water on here, so just keep it moving so that it'll keep it from warping. But this paper from Simon Says is super, super thick and really high quality, so it shouldn't warp too much on you, which is another thing that I really like about it. So I'm just going to heat this up. And here's a nice little tip for you. If you're having issues with it warping, because pretty much any paper will warp when you get it wet, just flip it over and heat it again until it just warps back into place. Because the forces will kind of counteract each other. So our piece of paper is pretty dry now. And you can see, I'll bring it up to the camera here, that it has a couple of levels of interaction. Because of the perfect pearls, you have dots of perfect pearls. That's where the water interacted with the distress ink, and then of course the dots that we stamped. So this is really fun. Almost it kind of reminds me of like a turtle, these two green tones. So I think that's really fun and totally goes with like a masculine card. So I'm going to clean my stamp up and my work area up, and I'll be back in a second to start putting the card together. Alright, so now I can start putting my card together. I have a card base of Nina White cardstock, and I'm just going to put some adhesive around the edges of my cardstock. And by using this more strong adhesive from my ATG, it's going to really keep the card together, and it will keep this background sticking down, even though it's still a little bit damp. And then I want to do a relatively simple sentiment here and image, and I'm going to be using this set from Lawn Fawn titled Year 1. It's their first anniversary set, and I'm going to use both the stamps on some more watercolor paper, and this is just a scrap that I have before where I'm going to stamp my sentiment. And I think I'm going to use some Spice Tin Jenny Bolin ink and just get this centered. And you can use, I'm going to use the smoother side for this. I just wanted the whites to match because I'm going to be stamping the image on another piece of watercolor cardstock. So I'm going to get this centered and stamp down. Perfect. And then I'm going to stamp my birthday cake on the rough side. And I'm just going to do this by creating some more watercolor looks with this solid color stamp, because the solid stamps work really, really well with this watercolor technique. And I wanted to really make that watercolor technique shine. So I've inked it up really well with some peeled paint, and now I'm just going to go around the edges with some forest moss. And then I'm going to spray again with my pearlized water. And I'm just going to do this on my mat so I don't get everything behind it kind of wet. And just make it nice and wet. You only need like 2 sprays for this one because it's a very small image. And then just press it down into your paper and kind of let it sit there for a second to let everything absorb. And then lift up. And then you can also use the second image. I'm going to spray it again. And then stamp down again. And I might actually end up using the second one for this project. So this is definitely a trial and error type deal. And I'm not exactly happy with the way the first one turned out because it ran a little bit too much for my liking. So I'm just going to ink it up again. But this time I'm only going to spray it once and from a little bit further away. And maybe this will get the desired effect that I'm looking for. And now when I stamp down, it shouldn't run very much at all. Perfect. Okay, so I did 2 sprays still, but I put my mister a lot farther away, so that gave me a more precise look. I still like the shadowed look. If you were going to stamp maybe this, actually we'll try this, over this shadowy one that I have before that didn't show the detail very well, I think I'm just going to ink this up with some Spice Tin ink, and you can look right through the stamp and then stamp over it. And then you have this cool, like, dimensional effect. So you have the green kind of showing out from behind it. So that's pretty cool. But I think I'll use this second one that I have here. So I'm just going to cut it out with my little cutter bee scissors and with a little border around the edge, and I'll be back in a second. Alright, and now that I have my little cake cut out, I'm just going to ink the edges here with some Spice Tin ink, just to give it that definition that I really like. And I can put that on my piece of paper here. And this is Hero Hues paper from their C collection of blues. And it's cut using Spellbinders, Labels 16. And it's this size, the 3rd largest. And I just love this shape. And I think it's definitely neutral enough where you can use it on a guy's card without being concerned of it looking too girly or anything like that. And before I put that down, I almost forgot, I'm going to ink the edges of this as well. And now I can put it down on the card, making sure to keep the edges kind of equidistant on these sides and the top, and that will make it look nice and even. And then I can go ahead and ink the edges of my sentiment, and I'll place it on the card right underneath the birthday cake. And I think I will ink around the entire edges of the card here. And just to bring out that nice little shine and sparkle of the dots in the background, I'm going to put some gemstones down here, right on the edges of the sentiment strip, and this will just make it look like Brad's holding it down, and it matches the Hero Hues paper perfectly because these are all meant to coordinate. And I think that adds a nice touch. Even if it's not necessarily the most manly thing you can add to a card, I think it gives it balance with the blue that's already on here. And it really brings back that circle theme that we have going on in the card. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed watching this fun little tutorial this week. Here's a picture of the finished card. And here's a close-up. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you again next week on another Video Tutorial Monday.